For centuries, the Emperor of Japan was not merely a political ruler. He was considered a living god, a divine being descended directly from Amaterasu, the Shinto goddess of the sun. This belief was not just religious folklore whispered among common people. It was official state doctrine, woven into the very fabric of Japanese law, education, and military culture. School children were taught to revere the emperor as sacred. Soldiers died in his name, believing they were serving a deity on earth. The entire imperial system rested on this foundation of divine authority, and questioning it was not just disapproved of, it was dangerous. Then came August 1945. Japan had just endured the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Soviet Union had declared war on Japan. The empire was collapsing from every direction. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito did something that had never happened before in Japanese history. He spoke directly to the Japanese people through a radio broadcast, announcing the acceptance of the Allied surrender terms. His voice, heard publicly for the very first time, sent shockwaves through an entire nation. But what exactly did he say? And did he truly renounce his divine status? The radio address Hirohito delivered on August 15th is known in Japan as the Gyokuon Hoso, which translates to the dual voice broadcast. The speech itself was recorded the previous night and played over national radio the following morning. Millions of Japanese citizens gathered around radios, many hearing their emperor's voice for the absolute first time in their lives. The experience was overwhelming and deeply emotional for a population that had been taught to regard him as something beyond human. However, and this is where the historical record becomes critically important, Hirohito did not explicitly declare himself non-divine in this broadcast. The speech focused primarily on the decision to end the war, citing the devastating new weapons being used against Japan and the desire to prevent further suffering of the Japanese people. He spoke in classical Japanese so formal and archaic that many ordinary citizens struggled to fully understand what he was actually saying. The renunciation of divinity, the moment history often points to, came later and in a different form entirely. The actual renunciation of divine status came on January 1st, 1946, through a formal imperial rescript now commonly referred to in English as the Humanity Declaration. In this document, Hirohito stated that the ties between the emperor and the Japanese people do not depend upon mere legends and myths. He rejected the concept that the emperor was a manifest deity, using the Japanese term Akitsumi Kami, and that the Japanese people were superior to other races and destined to rule the world. This declaration was issued under significant pressure from the Allied occupation forces led by General Douglas MacArthur. The supreme commander for the Allied powers wanted to dismantle state Shinto and the ideological machinery that had fueled Japanese militarism and expansionism. Stripping the emperor of his divine status was a central part of that project. The new post-war constitution of Japan, which came into effect in 1947, further cemented this transformation by redefining the emperor as the symbol of the state and of the unity of the people, with no political power whatsoever. Here is where historians genuinely disagree. Was Hirohito's renunciation of divinity a sincere personal statement? Or was it a carefully managed political performance designed to satisfy the Allied powers while preserving the imperial institution itself? Many scholars argue it was largely the latter. The declaration was drafted with significant input from American occupation officials and Japanese government advisors who were working together to protect Hirohito from being tried as a war criminal. Interestingly, the Japanese text of the declaration is notably more ambiguous than its English translation suggests. Some Japanese historians point out that Hirohito never used language that straightforwardly said he was not a god. The phrasing was subtle enough that different audiences could interpret it differently. For many Japanese people at the time, the emperor remained a deeply sacred and revered figure, regardless of what any official document stated. So to answer the original question directly, yes, there was a real historical moment where Emperor Hirohito formally distanced himself from claims of divinity, but it was not in the August 1945 surrender broadcast, as is commonly assumed. It came months later, in January 1946, and it was shaped as much by geopolitical calculation as by genuine personal conviction. The story is far more nuanced than a simple yes or no. It sits at the intersection of theology, politics, military defeat, and the careful reconstruction of a nation's identity from the ruins of a devastating war. History rarely delivers clean, simple answers, and this moment is a perfect example of exactly that truth.